morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. This is 90who10. I am your co-host, Jessica Entner, and I am joined by my fabulous other co-host, Dan Eisenstein.
Hi.
And today, I'm very excited. We have our very first guest and dear friend, David Faustino.
Hey.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Should we tell the people who don't know who David Faustino is? Should we remind them that I was not Married with Children?
Wait, can I give you a big intro? Can I give you a big intro?
Yeah,
I got a big intro. Ready?
Oh, you ready? I'm gonna be quiet.
Yeah. So today we have our guest, one of the most acclaimed actors from one of the longest running sitcoms in history that put Fox on the map, Married with Children's own Bud Bundy / David Faustino.
there it is. That's I'm that guy.
You're that guy.
I'm that guy.
For those that don't know, Married with Children was truly one of the biggest sitcoms on television in the 90s. And you were very, very, very well known, as was Christina Applegate and Katie Seagal and why do I want to say Ted Bundy? Ed O'Neill.
I call Ted Bundy sometimes when people get it confused. Like, oh, it's Ted Bundy. No, I'm not Ted Bundy.
Yeah. No, you are not. But yeah, what was that like? Let's get into it.
So let me ask you, Dave. I mean, I've known you for 30 plus years. You're one of my closest friends. But for people who don't know, I mean, talk about, where you grew up. You grew up here in LA and your family life and some stuff kind of before Married with Children, how you rolled into becoming like a child actor.
Oh, well, I'll give you the basics. I grew up here in Los Angeles. I grew up in the Burbank area, and then my father was a costumer. My father Roger was a costumer for like 30 years, and there was a producer, a commercial producer, who came into his office and saw my older brother Randy, who's 11 years older, but he was cute as could be, like unbelievable. And the producer was like, I really like his look and so they had him audition and he got it. And then my parents were like, wow, this is pretty cool, and so then they got my sister into it, who's 4 years older than me. And they all worked like a decent amount, some commercials, some movies of the weeks, things like that. And then I came along. No, I'm just kidding. No, I came along and I just started at 3 months old. My first job was at literally 3 months old. I played Lily Tomlin's daughter. Yes. That's how small my anatomy was at the time. They were like, oh, we'll take him.
Babies look like babies, right?
So I played my first role was a girl. And then I just literally started, just doing it. The baby commercials, then the toddler commercials, and I started really like just booking a lot of work. Great shows, like old school shows like Fantasy Island and Family Ties, and I mean, you name it. It was great, and I enjoyed working a lot. There was never a part of me who was like, oh, I don't want to do this. The only time was actually because I couldn't be on any of the sports teams or do any of those kind of things, because the way they have, commercials and theatrical auditions for children is obviously right after school. So, they start around 3:30, 4 o'clock. You're not making any practices or anything like that. So I missed out a little bit on that. But other than that, like, I love working. I love being on set. I love being on voiceover, doing voiceover work. And it just fulfills me. The only crappy part about being an actor is those moments where you don't have work.
It's funny, just because I know you, Dave, so long and so well. You've told me a story a couple times about when I don't know, I guess there was something that you got really close on, and I can't remember. It might have even been like Small Wonder or something, but you know, you ended up not getting it, and you were telling me a story about how you wanted this more than anything, that you basically put it out to the universe, prayed to God that something bigger would come your way, and then Married with Children happened. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it's true. I can't remember the original project right now, but it was something that I was very sensitive, as I still am. I cried my eyes out for days not when I found out, because I got, like you said, really close. It was between me and like, but then my dad used to teach me, God rest his soul, he used to teach me that the best way to pray is to be grateful for the thing that you want already, as if you have it. And so I was like, I don't know, I somehow took that to heart and just ran with that. So every night I would like lay in bed and be like, I'm so grateful, thank you God for I always wanted to be on a series, and I had never gotten that yet. I had done movies and things, and I just said, thank you God for putting me on a great show and something, a series, something that'll go a long time. And after a few months of that, 3-4 months of that, along came Married with Children. And I was actually a replacement. I think you know this, Dan. Christina and I both were replacements to two other children actors that shot the pilot.
I know, and it's funny, I had met Ron Levitt, who was the producer of Married with Children, just shortly before I met you. And one of the greatest stories that you ever told me was that I guess when you finally went to network, there was a room full of people, all kinds of people, and Ron was sitting in the middle, and he said, "Hey kid, don't worry about any of these people. My opinion is the only one that matters."
Yeah. Yeah. Ron Levitt, for those who don't know, is one of the two creators of the show, Ron Levitt and Michael Moy. Ron Levitt was one of the funniest people I've ever known in my life. I can't even repeat any of the shit he would say, but he was one of the funniest guys in the world. And Dan had his. Were you guys literally next door to each other?
So my grandparents had a beach house in Malibu, and Ron had rented the beach house next door for the summer. Yeah. And then I just, he was super. I was a kid, like, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years old. And he was just super cool to me. We talked a few times. I had no idea who he was. He just was a nice guy. There was actually we started talking about cars and stuff. He was just a nice guy. Yeah, I had no idea who he was.
Oh, that is funny. That's when you have the best conversations with people.
Sometimes we don't even realize that you're talking to somebody who's a celebrity or this or that. That's when they can be themselves, and the best conversations happen. You were saying you were at a dinner in New York and you were sitting next to Lenny Kravitz. Something like that happened?
Yeah, so it was like, Daryl Hannah, and it was just like, it was that time, and it was really cool, and I got invited to this dinner, and I got there a little late, and it was, so they put me at the, side, toward the end of the table, and sitting across from me was Lenny Kravitz, just like literally like right across. So I didn't put together, either because I just didn't know his music that well at the time, or dude, we got into the deepest, best, coolest, most awesome conversation ever. And then no one even had to tell me that it was Lenny Kravitz. Somehow it just clicked in. I was like, wait, this is, and then he's like, dude, come back to my, because he liked the conversation so much that he was like, come back to my crib and let's smoke a joint. I was like, yeah. So we all go back there and we smoke, and he's got like the craziest weed in the world. And I became aware of like really self-aware, and I turned into a completely different person, and our conversation was just not. And so, but the funniest part of it is I ran into him at a party like years later, and I go, I said, I still remember the night we had dinner. You invited me over and we smoked a joint, and he finished the conversation and he was like, and you got fucked up.
That's great. That's
That's
awesome.
the worst when, like, back in the day, like your face is falling off and you're like, I'm really high. And now I'm with people I don't know super well. And this guy's a huge rock star. Like,
Paranoia of the worst kind. Tell him.
so David has little children who you
Yeah.
may hear in the background, and it's squeals of delight. So we love that. We love that. So you're a dad. So
I'm
let's
a dad,
address
and normally I would be in my sound booth or office to do a podcast, but since I'm not at home and I'm in this giant house with horrible acoustics, you're gonna be hearing my kids for sure. I have two kids, a little son that's only 16 months, and a daughter who's 7 years old.
So you literally are married with children.
I am married with children.
And let's talk a little bit more about that, because we just touched on married with children a little bit. I mean, what was that like coming into that? What were you, like 12 years old when that started?
Yes, so I was 12, almost turning 13. And again, like I said, we were replacements, Christina and I, but we went into, they brought the finalists into network, the Fox network. And I was nervous, but I don't know. I was less nervous as a kid going into a audition as I am as an adult. Just I think because I put a lot of pressure on myself because I was on this big show and people should, I should be the best, and as a kid you don't really do that to yourself. So I did a lot of that. But so we went into the Fox network, and there was 3 Kellys, 3 Buds, and they had us all read together. Like I would read with Christina and then this other girl. But when I was in the room with Christina, that's when the laughs were just like going off.
Right.
First of all, she's like easy to act with because she's so good and right there, and then that of course helped me be better, and I got it. Not to mention I did audition for the show the first time and didn't get it. I only got like into the first callback, and then that was it. I lost it from there.
And
So
it's on I think it's on Netflix right now, or one of the streaming services. I'm not sure which one, but
I think it's on Hulu.
On Hulu. But I went back during kind of the pandemic and I watched, some of the early episodes. And one of that first one, I think you're like a army guy or dressed in like an army thing, and it is classic. Yeah, you were genius.
You say "Die, call me Bimbo."
Yeah, it was genius. I mean, for people who haven't seen it, go back and watch it. It's great. It really was great.
It's so funny though, because I loved that show, and it wasn't until it was like later in the seasons, because the first couple seasons of it, or the first 2 seasons, Fox was still just getting its footing, right, as a network a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is like Simpsons days. This is like Tracy Ullman days, which I loved. So this show is really credited with putting Fox on the map as a competing like network, but. Yeah. It would probably not get made today. I mean, a lot of the shows that we grew up with would not get made today with the 2023 lens, because it was pretty
racy,
un-PC in so many ways.
We got away with a lot, and they actually chose Michael and Ron, the creators, based on a show they had done with Jason Bateman, like just 3 years before. I think it was called "It's Your Move."
Yeah, It's Your Move. And wasn't Garrison on that too?
David Garrison was on it, and who ended up playing Steve, the first neighbor. So Fox approached them and they said, "How would you like to do a show where you can basically say and do whatever you want?" And they were like, that piqued their interest, and the rest is history. It went on 11 years.
Yeah.
But to your point, Jess, the first 3 years, like you said, all you had ABC, NBC, CBS.
Yeah.
And so for the first 3 years, we didn't. I barely got recognized. Like no one really knew the show too much until this woman named Terry Racolta she's either a multimillionaire or a billionaire. I'm not sure which, but she came. She lives in Michigan, and she came into the TV room where her kids were like cracking up at this show, and she sat there and watched it for 5 or 10 minutes and was just appalled by it that her children were watching this show. And because of her status and power, and she was married to someone else very powerful, uh, they successfully pulled McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and one other huge product from the show.
As
And
advertisers. Wow.
yeah, as advertisers. Finally, I think they came crawling back later when the
So
ratings.
did that kind of help? Did that
Yeah.
like no PR is bad PR type of thing?
Well, no. So the point is after that, it became a press piece. People were reading about it, and the show, like, it went from, like, almost no one watching it to, the next week the ratings, like, well, through the roof. People wanted to know what was so bad about this show.
Right.
She shined a big spotlight on it, basically.
Well, that's kind of like what Tipper Gore did when she shoved all the explicit lyrics. Like the minute you saw that, you're like, I want that album. I want to know what words.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you went from this kid who wanted to be on TV, who wanted to be on a hit show, who got on a TV show that wasn't getting that much notice. Then all of a sudden, it explodes. What was that like?
That was weird, man. So I went from, like, wanting nothing more than to be like, someone say, hey, because the stuff I had done before was the commercials, guest spots. No one recognized me really. And I wanted to, you want to be recognized for something. But the first 3 years I would go to these events like Teen Beat magazine, Tiger Beat magazine, and you'd have all these celebrities, and they all know, all the, like, girls, and everybody knew these guys. No one knew who I was, which was hurtful to me. And then when the show, when that woman did what she did and the show blew up, it became I became very paranoid with the fame. I didn't expect that part of it to I didn't expect that. And then you had, you're also a teenager, so we have other teenagers who are either jealous or want to make fun or tease or all of these things that you don't know are coming. And a lot of that happened at my school. And there's a saying that fame doesn't change you as much as it does the people around you.
Yeah.
And I found that to be extremely true. I tried to, like, link up with a couple of my old friends from school, and it was just the weirdest day. Like, they thought I was going to be like a total jerk now because I was on a show, and it was just weird. So, and then I started hating being recognized. I really did, for about the next, I'd say the next about 4 years. I hated it. I always had a hat, sunglasses. I was always hiding. And then, I don't know, something clicked one day, and I realized I was lucky to be on the show. And then you would hear people just say how much their family laughed at it. And then I just somehow started embracing it. And it's been...
You leaned into the good stuff, like the things that it was bringing to the culture, like families sitting down and watching TV together again and stuff like that.
Exactly. And, and then I was starting to get older, so you didn't have, like, little kids teasing, like teenagers teasing you all the time. So I felt good, and I even enjoy going to the autograph shows where you meet all your fans, and I don't know if I would have been able to do that before.
I have a couple follow-up questions, because I do think it's interesting, and when you're talking about being a teenager and all of a sudden, you go from, as most kids, like, I remember I wanted to be a child actor. I'm like, I could do that. I want to be in a show. But when you're actually successful and you all of a sudden have fame at a very young age, because you were about 15 when it really hit?
Yeah, when it started. Yeah.
Right. And you're right in the middle of, like, adolescence, which is not an easy time, regardless of where you are in the world. It's tough. So
especially
now
with the acne.
right, and you're growing up on television. Don't
Yeah.
forget that, right? So
Well,
you're
they would
going
cover all it up, but then when I went out in real life, you have acne.
right. You're like, right. I didn't have my makeup artist today.
Yeah.
But all of these things, and you were saying how your friends became just kind of they didn't know who you were, and they were projecting in a weird way. So
Yes.
there are a ton of children in LA that grew up in this world. Obviously, Christina Applegate is another actress who was a child actress. There's Dan, you as well. I always wanted to be, but my mother adamantly said, I will never do that. Like, just put her foot down. Like, I'm not doing it. How was it for you with like making new friends and like when you met Dan? Because I remember you guys had such a solid group of kids that you hung out with, but a lot of you did come from similar backgrounds at that point.
Yeah.
Like, when did that transition for you from your school friends to people that kind of understood you better?
Well, first of all, I had to leave the school, which was, then it was just set school. So I was in seventh grade when I left. So I would say like, I have to say there was probably like three of my original old school friends before I got on Married with Children that I'm still, somewhat close with and are really cool. But the majority was not. So to be honest with you, I just started making new friends. I mean, on my show, the script supervisor, a woman named Kitty Rourke, has a son my age, Dan and I's age, and he came to set one time, and of course I was like, "Who's this kid on my set? Like, what's going on here? Who are you?" But then we ended up like hitting it off, and we became just really close. I think, is this before I met you, D?
Yeah, you met Bo first. So we're talking about our friend Bo.
Oh, God.
And we're gonna roll. Yeah, we're gonna roll more into that. But before we move too far ahead, I just want to dip back for a second.
Yeah.
I know that Sam Kinison was one of your favorite co-stars that was on Married with Children.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any good Sam stories, or just before we move a little bit into like our like teens and stuff, just back to like being on Married with Children and getting recognized and working with Ed and what that whole experience was about for you.
So working on Married with Children was one of those sets that is a rare set, because first of all, there was not a lot of tension, and the producers were just so chill.
Yep.
And I think that's what helped the success of the show is, it wasn't like, let's do it till it's perfect and we got to get it like perfect. It was kind of free flowing, and it went well. And then I started learning some things. When I got on that show, I had never been on a sitcom except the one episode of Family Ties. So I didn't know anything about comic timing yet. So I learned a lot on the job. Like, I learned from Ed mostly. And that's why I started to take on a lot of his mannerisms as the character. And but it was a great set to work on, man. We really, I know people say this all the time, so I guess it's a little cliche, but we really did all get along, and except for maybe Ed and Amanda Burse.
Yeah. And of all, I mean, look, you were on Married with Children for like 12 years, and you guys had a lot of great people who came on there. Who was one of your favorite people that came on there?
Oh man, I have a few, but definitely Sam Kinison.
Yeah. And you have a crazy story about hanging out with Sam, right? Don't you?
I mean, I have so many stories. Sam had the biggest heart, right? Was the most loving person, but almost to a fault where he was off. I mean, how old was I when he was on that episode? I think I was probably around 16-ish.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And he would like walk up to me while I was sitting in my chair or whatever, and he'd be like, "Give one of these to a girl, she'll just love you." And like he was offering me drugs.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
A 16-year-old drugs, and of course I turned it down. At that point in my life, I had never really, except for maybe weed, and I had never really So I didn't take it or touch it, or maybe I took it and then threw it away. But then I don't know. There was something he liked about me. I think there was my innocence, perhaps, compared to his his debauchery, and he would.
Probably.
I'm thinking. I don't know.
I mean, there's a great shot of you guys from the Rock and Jock softball game where Sam's like passed out on your shoulder. It's a
Oh,
really
so
great.
I have this shot of Sam. Sam was, I mean, an addict of the worst.
Let's talk about who he was real quick, because I know there's a lot of people that probably don't remember him
Oh.
that might be listening. But Sam
Oh,
Kinison was one of the most amazing comedians from the 80s and 90s. He was known for his kind of, he would do these things where he'd get really
Screaming.
heated and scream, but he was funny as hell.
If you don't know Sam Kinison, check out a movie
Google
called Back to School.
Back to school.
And the thing that I love about that episode that he was on, it's a two-parter. It was the Christmas episodes. And Ted McGinley, who came on later as Jefferson Darcy, he's in that episode. He like replaces Al as the dad, and he's like the perfect dad for you guys. You guys love him.
It's a great episode. So what they basically did was they took the movie "It's a Wonderful Life" and they did a spoof on that where Al is down and he's not feeling good, so he has an angel visit him. But in Al's world, if he had never been born, everybody's life was so much better. Like Jefferson was our dad, and we remember we were hugging each other, loving each other, in the show, and it was the complete opposite of what Al was. So that was the setup, but it was a two-parter, and he just took a liking to me, and he started inviting me out to all of his shows, and I know you went to a few with me, didn't you, D?
I don't know if I did or not, but I mean, I know how much you love Sam, and it's not in my notes, but as I was thinking about it too, I mean, Jessica had mentioned, you're like 14, 15, 16. And what a lot of us also remember about Married with Children was there was a lot of like hot girls in these like mini dresses, like girls who went on to become very famous, like Pam Anderson and stuff. And that must have had a little bit of an impact on you as a 14, 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It was a show where, especially even just in the Al's shoe store where he worked and the women that would come in there. I mean, yeah, I was a young adolescent, horny kid, and so it was fun though. It was fun to have those. And then there would be. Then as I got older, there would be like girls that were more my age, and and that was a little fun too.
Yep. And so you're on Married with Children. You're 12, 13, 14. You're going now to these like teen magazine things. You're looking to make some new friends. I know you became very friendly with Brian Green. You'd known him for a while, probably before that. Mm-hmm. And how did you meet? So Robert Gavin, who is a friend of ours, we're going to talk about ballistics in a little bit here. But how did you meet Robert?
Okay, so before we started our club, Dan, ballistic, all that, there was this big club. It moved around, so when I say big club, I just mean a lot of people. That was run. There's the kids. Right. It was run by a guy named Alfie, so it was called Alfie Soda Pop Club, and they would just serve New York seltzer, but they would have great DJs, and like all the kid celebrities started going. And Alyssa Milano was there like every week, which was. She was a big crush of mine. As a matter of fact, her schoolroom and my schoolroom on set were literally, like two offices apart. And like whenever I would try to like talk to her, I'd get all tongue tied and stupid, and it was just like, I had a big crush on her. And then a lot of that came from Alfie's because I watched her dance with her friends and all that stuff. So that Robert Gavin, one of the four partners of Ballistics, is how I met him there, and I just really took a liking to him. He had a sense of humor, and he was very funny.
And a car.
And the poo-poo car. The poo-poo car, because he had no money at the time. It was just a big piece of crap. But that's how I met Dan.
Yeah.
because Rob was like, "Come to the set." It was Pump Up the Volume with Christian Slater, and so I was like, "Hell yeah, I got to go see my friend Rob, do his thing." And I went there, and that Dan and Rob had already hit it off as friends on the set, and he introduced me to Dan. Unless I met you at that other audition.
So I
first.
met you the very first time at an audition. So the thing to do back then in the 90s is if you were like a struggling actor, but you had a friend who was like doing well as an actor, you'd bring him along to an audition to make it seem like you were more important. And so we had this friend, Bo Jesse Christopher, who was an extra in Pump Up the Volume, but he was in Point Break. He had a pretty big role, and he's done a lot of other stuff too. He's an acting coach now. So I was at an audition, and Bo Jesse was at the same audition. He brought you along with him. That was actually the first time I met you. And then there was a screening for Pump Up the Volume. And
you had white. What car were you?
That audition, I had that Volkswagen Corrado. But by the time I'd seen you the next time, I'd gotten rid of that car and I got a BMW M3. And
I remember that car.
And so there was a screening for Pump Up the Volume, a cast and crew screening, and I actually invited Nikolai Adler, who I was going to summer school with that summer, and we had just become friends. And we went to the screening, and it was you and Robert and Bo, and we all hung out.
And Aston Martin.
What's that? No, we were at my BMW. We all pulled up. We hung out. Yeah, we all hung out afterwards. And then the next day, you guys ended up coming over to my house, and we've been hanging strong for 30 days, 30 years after.
Dan's house was like the
Central.
Dan's Central. Like we were always there. It was just, I have so many funny memories of.
We talked about that on our original episode.
Well, listen, in full disclosure. So like when you're like 16, 17 and you got a girlfriend, you're looking for a place you guys can hang out. So we're hanging with like a bunch of like people, 20, 30 people, in the afternoon. And Dave's like, "Hey, I'm going to be with my girlfriend later. Do you mind if we come hang out at your house?" And I was like, and I was alone for the summer. I was like, "Yeah, come hang out." And so Dave and his girlfriend at the time came over and hung out, and we just hung out from that point forward.
As a girl listening to this, like that's, I think, why I loved hanging out with you, Dan, is because you guys were so easy about friendships. And let's be real, girls are complicated. Girls are different. We're a different beast. And in high school years, it was definitely, I had a best friend in high school, Dan knows. And, when we were, girl relationships are complicated. The way that you guys formed your friendships and they're lifelong friendships, it sounds so easy. And I think that's why I loved hanging out so much with you, Dan, is because I did feel like one of the guys. I felt like a little sister, if anything. I never felt like subjected to the BS. And I love that about you guys. And I always have said that.
I wonder if the difference between guys and girls is that girls are more competitive against each other. And so is that
maybe. I mean, personally, I've always had a lot of girlfriends and a lot of guy friends, but I always felt it was easier to become friends with guys because guys are just like, if you're cool and you guys get on about music, friends for life. You know what I mean? Like and I'm a musical person. So for me, I would hang out with the guys and be like, "Oh, have you heard this artist?" And that was kind of my in a weird way. But just listening to you guys and how your friendships evolved and knowing Dan and knowing some of the players and how long you guys have been friends really honestly makes my heart full. So hats off to you guys for.
Thank you.
It's interesting because,
we're still all best friends.
I love it.
We are. And, it's interesting because, Nick and I both grew up in kind of this like these wealthy atmospheres, but Dave, it was like an anomaly because he had this fame, which was not something like I'd ever really dealt with before. So that was like kind of interesting to me, And then for you, Dave, I mean, you grew up in the Valley, and
we didn't have a bunch of money.
And so it must have been kind of a trip. Now you're like hanging out in Beverly Hills, hanging out in Malibu, you're hanging out with me, you're hanging out with Nick. You're seeing something different. We're seeing something different with you. it was kind of like this interesting, we all kind of brought something to the party kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was a respect that you guys had for each other. And that I think is the difference. I never felt like you were friends with David because he was famous. And I never, you know what I mean? Like there was something
it wasn't
about
that.
you, David.
Dave and I are like brothers, and we're
Yeah.
deeply connected, and we have a love of life, and we see a lot of life the same way, and we have a lot of similar experiences in our background, in our family background, stuff like that. So there's a deep, deep connection. But on top of that, like what I'm saying is when you're 16, you're not having those talks that he and I are now having at 50 years old. But you're like, dude, I mean, Dave knows I love him. He's my brother. But you're like, dude, this guy's famous. What's that about? What that's kind of neat. One of my favorite experiences ever is, even to this day, if we go to Vegas or something, just to walk, 10 or 20 feet behind Dave and let him walk through the casino and just to see people as they walk past him. Oh my God. And that was like it was one of the most fun things ever, especially, as at the height of the show we'd go to Vegas when we were in our 20s and just to walk 20 feet behind him and to see people's reactions after they walk past him, they realize they just walked past him. That was like one of the most fun things ever. But going back a little bit, like what was that like? You're in the Valley, you're on a hit show, but now you're kind of hanging out with the 90210 kids. What was that experience like for you?
It was a little weird because I was a bit insecure. Again, these guys were on bigger shows. My show hadn't, really.
No, I mean like 90210, like as far as me and Nick, like hanging out with like
actual 90210 kids.
Yeah.
Not the show version, the real ones.
Yeah. It was amazing because in a lot of ways. One, I came from a really strict upbringing. My father was a big disciplinarian, and we couldn't do much at all. I mean, even when I was making all the money on the show in the beginning, like he was very strict. So I got we get into a lot of trouble. So then to be able to go to a place where, like Dan's house, where there wasn't that kind of
construct.
Yes, and angst and anger and rage. And my dad's like full-blooded Sicilian. Not nothing against Sicilians. I'm half one myself, but he had a big temper. I think Dan probably saw it a couple times.
Yeah.
But I loved being able to get out of that environment, and my dad did get a little more lenient because he, as the show became more, bigger and bigger, it was like, how do you control your son, who's now this giant TV star? Yeah, and it was a little bit harder for him, but still, I just liked going other places because there was a freedom and an openness, and we could get away with a lot more. And I just remember one thing that makes me laugh about going over to your house, Dan, is you had already passed out, and me, because I had like barely smoked weed at the time.
Yeah.
So like when how you smoke in the beginning and just everything's hilarious.
Yeah.
Like so Rainbow just coming. He goes, Dave, come here, come here. And he just started taking eggs out of your refrigerator and dropping them on the ground for no apparent reason in the kitchen. And for some reason, I found that so funny, dude. I laughed for forever. Just because, like, again, that's something you wouldn't be able to do at my house, know. And so it was cool, but
I'm gonna have to give him some shit for that, even though I know that story.
Yeah, you have to. It was the best, but it was his face and how excited he was about it. Just like, and grab another one.
So we're hanging out, me and Nick and Dave and Robert, and we decide that we want to throw a party. We're these cool guys, and we start talking about it more and more, and all of a sudden, we decide to do a weekly club when we're 17 years old. Nick Adler, his dad, owned the whiskey at the time, and we decided we're going to do a weekly club the summer of '91. and it took off, and it became pretty big for about 2.5 years. And Dave was a huge catalyst to that because he had a huge celebrity reach. He was able to go on Arsenio Hall and promote it, go on radio shows and promote it. But then on top of that too, he had some celebrity friends that he could reach out to. Let's talk about Ballistics a little bit and what that meant for you at the time and what kind of impact that's had on your life since.
And also just add about the music, because I feel like that's really why you guys had that tape.
We had a love of hip hop.
Yeah,
we still have.
That's really what it came from, right?
It came from a little bit of the inspiration of the party I told you before, Alfie's Soda Pop Club, but we wanted it to be more edgy and like, so being able to be at the Whiskey, as Dan mentioned, they have a restaurant license. It's not a nightclub license. So we were able to have minors and adults, as long as the adults would have a bracelet to be able to drink. But we were able to mix adults and teenagers because of the restaurant license. So that helped us out a lot, because the kind of people in their 20s that could drink could have a drink if they wanted, or if we had guests that were performing that night, we could offer them alcohol and all those things that you couldn't really do in a nightclub at our age.
But dude, I mean, there was all these people coming from all over. One of the kids who was coming was this guy. At the time, he was called Will 1X. We had a weekly hip hop contest, a freestyle rap contest that Dave actually hosted, and this kid would win every single week. And because of your friendship with Eazy-E, he was there checking him out. This kid gets discovered, and he goes on to be, Will I Am of the Black Eyed Peas. And anytime you hear Will talk to this day, Dave, he credits you specifically for getting his career started and for helping him out.
It's really cool. It's very cool. And now what's cool is that we've reconnected as we're shooting our documentary now. But Will, what most people don't know about Will 1X at the time, but what people don't know about Will I Am is he was a battle rapper. Like, Black Eyed Peas became a little poppy and stuff like that. And so he never, I didn't really hear much of that on the record, but Dan can attest, he was just slaying people on stage. Nobody could touch him. Do you know about the one night he lost, Dan?
Yeah, I do know. Yeah, but to go and tell.
They brought the little kid.
Yeah.
So they were so tired of this guy, this big, huge manager now, Polo, who manages BEP still, right?
Yeah.
They were so, now he's Will's manager, but before they were so tired of this kid Will winning that they were like, okay, how can we? So they got this little kid. How old do you think he might have been?
I don't know, like 10, 11, something like that.
Yeah, 10 or 11. And they did admit they wrote his rap.
They called him Little E.
E.
Yeah.
And they wrote his raps specifically for this battle.
Right.
They admitted later that they wrote the raps. And that he came up and the people were so impressed.
He got like a sympathy vote, really, though.
You think?
Yeah.
He did have some dope rhymes.
And Will talked about
the funniest about it is as humble and sweet as Will is, he came back that next week and tore that little kid a new.
He did. Talked about his mom. I mean, to the point where him and Polo got into a shoving match over it. Something they laughed about. And so the documentary that Dave is talking about is we're putting together with Taboo from the Black Eyed Peas, because they all credit Ballistics for where they got their start. And there's a bunch of great stories of people hanging out there: Robin Thicke, Soleil Moon Frye, Brian Green. Leo DiCaprio. We're making a documentary that's almost done about Ballistics, and should be on a streaming service near you very soon. So now you're in your 20s. You're one of the most recognizable faces out there. Married with children.
50.
What? No, but I'm saying as we're moving the story along.
I know.
You're in your 20s, and what's that like now? You're very famous. You got some money in the bank. The show's still on at this point. What was it like? You're hanging at the Playboy Mansion. You're going to Vegas. What was it like?
it was a trip, but it was just my life. So you
Yep.
know what I mean? It's like when somebody else's perspective is like, wow, but I was just in it,
Mhm.
Yeah.
living
Yeah.
it. I mean, even at ballistics, you know, I always say this, like people had more fun. Most people had way more fun at ballistics than I do. I can be a stress case, so I would sort of like, watch everybody else dancing, having fun. I usually hung out in the DJ booth because that's just kind of where I felt most at home and safest, and I had my DJ friend, with me. But um, as I moved into my 20s, you that's when I think life, you start to have some fears in life and things like that, and then you go, oh, how long will this show run?
Right.
How long will it go? Will I ever work again after? Ed O'Neill is going off to do this movie and that movie, and then Christina went off to do this movie and that movie. So I had some tough times in my early 20s with that in particular. But then I found this wonderful thing called voiceover, and it's been tremendous to me and is really kind of saved my life in a way.
I
It's
gotta tell you, your voiceover work though has freaked me out more than one time because I have a bad habit of like falling asleep on the couch while I'm watching TV. And
yeah.
more than one time, a commercial has come on that you've done the voiceover for, and I'll be like, "Is Dave here? Is
It's in
Dave in
my
the
house.
room?" Yeah,
Uh,
and that's happened to me more than one time. It's kind of funny, actually.
We have a good friend who's the voice of Chevy, and it's the same shit. Like
Yeah,
I'll
oh yeah,
hear it and be like, "What the hell? Why is he
yeah.
here?" Like
yeah, yeah,
I think I know that voice. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
I'm sure you
I
do
actually got
know.
Ed. By the way, I'm the one who talked. I don't know if you guys. I don't know about you, Dan. Have you've heard him do Zyrtec,
yeah, 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 yeah.
the phone company through Walmart? You know, he's a hilarious guy. But he was asking me what I'm up to, and I started telling him I'm doing. I've got a T-Mobile campaign. I got this show, and I shit you not, like 2 months later, I start hearing Ed all over the place.
Well,
He's
Ed's
like,
a great guy, and I know that like just from being your friend for so long, I know that two of the people that you're still very, very close with from the show are both Ed and Christina, and
yes,
that's nice. It's like you really were a family to some degree.
yes. Ed and Christina and I are very close. And as you were saying, Jess, earlier, that you couldn't make that show today. There's some truth to that, obviously, because of where we're at in the 2023, world. Um, but they're really desperately trying to get an animated version of the show going.
We need some more. Honestly, I feel like the shows like that, even though, yes, of course, as a woman, maybe there was a little objectification that happened here and there. I do think it's important. And I think that we've become very, very sensitive to things that, as our generation, we are like the least sensitive. We've heard it and seen it all, right?
Right.
Any Gen Xers like, bring it to me. We don't get offended very easily, and I feel like we need a little bit more of that. I feel like we need a little more Married with Children.
What?
Just a little, because we knew it was wrong. Like we knew Al Bundy was kind of a dick, his character.
Yeah, yeah.
But we appreciated it for what it was. And Christina, her character was a bombshell, but she was a shit kicker. Like it was like a
She
great,
was great.
it was
She
a
was
great
great.
show. It really was. And
Christina, when I go back and I watch some of the episodes that she's done, she was great. She was
are
just
you guys still close now? Have you talked to her?
we're very close. We're as a lot of your listeners or viewers may know, she was diagnosed with MS
Yeah.
this past year, and obviously that's extremely difficult for her, especially after she's had cancer,
Breast cancer.
double breast cancer, double mastectomy, and I get sad, I get emotional talking about it. I try. I've been a guest at the Race to Erase MS, a charity that's been going on for 30 years. As a matter of fact, they honored me this year and 30 others that have been going since the very beginning. and it was cool. And I tried to get Christina to come. I really wanted her to be there, because they're making huge strides in with MS, with different meds and
Stem
things.
cell research, yeah.
Yeah, but she just wasn't ready to go. Wasn't ready, which I totally respect. Maybe next year she will be, but she's obviously struggling with her health. And
What's awesome though? I mean, I know she just got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and it was really nice that she asked you to come and present to her. And that speech you gave you hit it out of the park, Dave. You did a great job. Really great job.
Thank you, man.
And so you touched on the fact that you are doing a lot of voiceover, which we know about. Thank God for voiceover.
I have to do a shameless promotion on my.
Yeah.
I have a new voiceover show on HBO Max called Fired on Mars, where this Luke Wilson is the lead, and we're all animated, but he gets a job on Mars. Basically, they're starting an outpost there, and he gets there, but by the time he's gotten there, he's been fired already. So it's his adventure and trying to get over on these people somehow. But it's a cool show. I play, of course, the owner of the whole operation. I play his son, and he's just a total egomaniac, crazy, So it's a fun role, and it's on HBO Max now. I think there's 10 episodes.
And what's it called again?
It's called Fired on Mars.
Fired on Mars. I'm gonna have to check it out. And just the last thing, I know the biggest thing in your life right now is you went, like we said earlier, from being on Married with Children to being married with children. What's that like? Tell us about your kids. What's fatherhood like? What's your daily life like being a dad?
Dude, I mean, obviously I love my kids and but some days, as you know, Dan, being a parent is very challenging.
Yep.
Especially my boy, he's got quite a set of lungs on him. we call him the pterodactyl because he's on pterodactyl.
That's what we used to call mine. So,
really?
Yeah. Now we call him a Smurf.
Pam used to call my son that, the baby pterodactyl.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess it's not.
It's a boy thing.
Yeah, it must be. Yeah. It must be.
Well, Dave, I love you so much. You're my brother, and I appreciate you being on. And up, I see somebody poking their head up. They poke up. Who's that?
Hi.
Hi, Ava.
Oh my gosh, what a cutie pie. Hi, Ava. Nice to meet you.
Ava, how old are you?
7.
7.
That's a good age.
Ava,
That's
who am I?
Really good age.
Who am I? Do you know who I am? Dave, I love you, bro. Thank you so much for being on.
David, we might have to have you back on. I have so many more follow-up questions.
I'd love to, when I have something to promote again or whatever, I'd love to come back. Thanks for having me. Dan, I loved, just being on a podcast with you. It's our first time doing that.
We are going to wrap up our 90who10 podcast, and we'll be back with another guest from our friend circle. But thank you guys for joining us today. And David, it's been so nice to see you again. You are a real one.
You too.
You've always been, and I appreciate you doing this with us. So thank you.
Yeah,
hope to see you in person soon.
After all these years,
you look great. You look the same.
It's like, what's she gonna look like now? And here you are. You look great.
Well, thanks. So do you.
Yeah, you look great. So, anyway, everybody who's watching, thank you for tuning in and continue to watch this show. I think it's going to blow up and be a big one. So, congratulations, guys.
Fired on Mars is what we're looking for David's show on HBO.
Fired on Mars. I don't come in until episode 4, just FYI.
All right, you can miss the first 3. Watch episode 4.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right,
guys.
bye. See you later.
Bye.